But they're like, why Cargill? I'm like, it's hard not to be motivated by that purpose. But I mean, if you think about it, there is nothing more critical in this world than nourishment. And it is just so at the heart of who we are and how we operate. So what I would say is we show up everywhere in how we serve that purpose.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Jennifer Hartsock. Jen is the Chief Information and Digital Officer of Cargill, a food company to the world that partners with farmers and customers to grow and produce more food with less impact. In 2024, Cargill earned an estimated $160 billion in revenue. Jen's been with the company for nearly 3.5 years, and across her tenure, she's helped consolidate and reorganize the company's business, in addition to helping the company define and enact its 2030 strategy. She also insourced a tremendous amount of the IT talent. And 2.5 years ago, she also became a board-level tech exec, joining the board of Ingersoll Rand. Jen is a past chief information officer of Baker Hughes, GE Oil and Gas, Cameron, and Caterpillar. Jen, welcome back to Technovation. As always, it's a great pleasure to speak with you today.
Oh, Peter, it's absolutely my pleasure. I can think of nothing more fun to do to start my day.
You're so kind to say that. Thank you so much. I wholeheartedly agree. Well, let's begin, if you don't mind, with the fascinating and complex and incredibly large scale organization that is Cargill. Can you provide a bit more context than I was just able to as to the business you're in, please?
Yeah, and Peter, I love doing this because Cargill is the company that most likely everybody's interfacing with, and they just have no idea. So we are the largest privately held organization in the U.S. We are family owned. We're 160 years old. So we've been around for a minute. 160,000 employees around the world in 70 countries. We commercially operate in over 100. And if I think about how people should contemplate where Cargill really has an impact, we feed the equivalent of about 500 million people full calories for an entire year. So that's the kind of output we have in the organization. But it could be in the lotion you use, it could be in the food that you eat, it could be in the salt you put on your driveway. Thankfully, we're past that season in Minnesota, or the salt you put on your French fries, because we get excited about those too. So it is in food, it is in products. We are all over the place in the food and agriculture supply chain.
That's a great overview. And Jen, having been in a blizzard in the Twin Cities in May, I caution you to speak with such authority and confidence on the weather there. But nevertheless, when we last spoke on the record, you were just a few months into your role as CIDO of the company. And I'd love to understand a little bit more about the ongoing transformation of the IT function. You and I have spoken off the record in between our on the record conversations, and I've been fascinating to learn more about the changes that are afoot and the ways in which you've thought about organizing as complex an IT organization, reflecting the complexity of the business that you just described. Can you talk a bit about some of that consolidation and its rationale, please?
Oh, absolutely. And there's probably a little bit of a context that's appropriate for what Cargill's going through too. So I mentioned we're 160 years old, and we are proud of that. We are also sometimes what I call we're a bit of an adolescent too. So about 15 years ago, give or take, we shifted from having over 100 independent business units that had their own HR, their own IT, their own finance. So effectively a holdco type of structure for those that are familiar with that. And we had an incredibly bold CEO that made just a very large strategic change in how we structured to moving from that independent holdco to an operating company type of structure. So when we did that, we centralized corporate functions. We wanted to make sure that we could leverage the scale, that we could understand how to make the right synergistic moves around talent and systems and all the things that you would expect to be beneficial for customers, for employees, for shareholders too. We wanted to make sure we were exposing that. What was really interesting is that we, like many orgs, did a significant amount of outsourcing, and we can absolutely talk more about that as we go, Peter. But what it led to is an organization where the IT team was structured for more efficiency of spend than it was really proximity to who we serve. So when over the last couple of years, we've been very intentional about thinking carefully about how we're structured to be able to support Cargill's ever-changing business. Happy to talk, we're in a pretty unique and interesting moment for that right now at Cargill too. But what we said is we're going to think about the way we operate in 4 major categories. I visualize it as a triangle with a point in the middle, but that's just so that it helps me. but it's how do we have our core services, the things that we leverage for scale, infrastructure, cybersecurity. We solve it once for Cargill. Then we have a number of systems and products that we call differentiated that serve a unique enterprise. And I should clarify for our listeners and watchers, this is a little confusing. At Cargill, we call our business units enterprises. So when I say that, I will try to remember what we mean is not all of Cargill. We mean one of our major P&Ls. So we have things that are unique to each of those business units, or maybe one of our corporate functions. But we have one set of stakeholders that are determining what those outcomes are that we're trying to drive. And the third category that we have for solutions is really where we share it across, where we have multiple business units, and those multi-stakeholder products we call hubs. So that's just what we call them. And then, of course, there's the processes and the tools and the governance and the strategy to make all of that run. So we shifted our talent to align to one of those four things. So we have a Strat and Gov team that sit in the middle. We have our core services in data and technology and cyber. We have very much enterprise or business unit specific or function specific teams under separate leaders. And then we have our hubs, which in our case are largely ERP and then manufacturing and supply chain related, sit under a different leader. And by doing that, what we found is that we were able to be not only more effective, but also more efficient. So where we thought we were operating for efficiency, it turned out we actually weren't. We were slowing down decision making. We weren't necessarily always ensuring our teams had alignment and understanding of the true outcomes they were trying to drive and what success was for Cargill while they were solving for technology problems. So it's been a pretty major shift when you're moving around a few thousand people to have them report differently, but we've been incredibly pleased. And my colleagues, so my business partners, my peers on the executive team have noticed how we show up differently and that we're serving those broader outcomes more effectively in the structure.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for that overview, Jen, and a terrific overview as to the rationale for the change and the value derived from it. Can you talk a bit about the structure of your team? Do you have chief information officers at what you would refer to as enterprise level, at the business unit level, who then are able to make decisions for their businesses as they also, kind of report back to you the decisions that are made? Talk a bit about how that happens from an org perspective as well.
Oh, it's a totally fair question. And what I would say is while we do not hand out that title, we reserve that. It's similar to our business unit leads aren't CEOs. We have one CEO, we have one CFO, we have one CIDO in the case of me, but the role is the same. So when I think about the folks on my team, so I have 4 leaders now that are focused on serving an enterprise or a function. So one of those business units or a function. We'll have 5 shortly. We're actually expanding my leadership team by 1, just given the sheer level of transformational change we're trying to drive. But those 4 and soon to be 5 leaders are absolutely the owners of their engineering talent. They are owners of the data teams that are specific to those groups. And what that means is they get to make decisions around, in partnership with our colleagues in those business units or functions, they make decisions on how to allocate that talent, how to allocate the capital, what to spend money on, how do we drive the right efficiency in the support backlog so that we can free up more time for things on the feature backlog, and how do we work together to solve those really interesting and unique challenges, because our business units are incredibly diverse. So what I want is, from a proximity perspective, to put the decision as close to those that have to live with the consequences as possible.
You mentioned a moment there, data, that they owners of their engineering talent, data teams, as you mentioned as well. Talk a bit about the philosophy you use when it comes to data. On the one hand, I can understand the necessity within the business units to have kind of data that is owned and encompasses the specificity of each of those business units. I could also see scenarios where combining that data and having perspectives across the entire, forgive me, in the more general term of enterprise, across the entire company of Cargill, would also be of value as well. How do you think about that? I don't know if there's tension or not, but the difference between data held at the business unit level versus data leverage at the enterprise level.
Yeah, and Peter, I would love to say that we've got all of this figured out, because that's what gives us fun job security. But I think that there is some intentionality in how we've thought about it. But we've gone through iterations, so we've learned and evolved as we've gone through this journey. So many years ago, when we started, we spent a lot of time thinking about some of those data domains and where do we need to drive for commonality. And I think we got most of them right. And then some of them, I think that we may have over-indexed one way or the other in either centralization or decentralization. I'll give an example on where I think we over-indexed on centralization. Customer, interestingly enough. In the way Cargill is structured, we have one part of our business that very much focuses on the agriculture supply chain part of the business. So they work a lot with farmers to originate grain. So when I say originate, they buy it. So when you have farmers in the Midwest of the US, as an example, we create a surplus of product. And that has to be taken from the farmers. We have to buy it from the farmers, and then we move it around the world to where it's needed. And that is a totally different view of a customer than what you would have in our food ingredients and or protein, which we now call our food business, because to them, customers are people buying final product to either consume or then add into other product, like in your soda, or it's fry oil that goes to your favorite restaurant. And so those types of things are a different interpretation of customer. Maybe a third angle was we have, and by the way, many of those are big customers that want to have really high-tech digitally enabled relationships. Then we have another business that's all about feeding animals at different life stages and at different locations around the world. A customer there might be incredibly small. And so onboarding a customer should be quick and easy. It should not have the same level of hurdles that you would expect in some of our bigger customers. And so we actually found that when we were trying to drive a common understanding of customer across all of those different go-to-market strategies, we actually made it too complicated. We slowed the process down. It took too long to onboard to be a customer at Cargill. And because in order to solve it for all, we were end up just kind of sub-optimizing for everyone simultaneously. So we actually went back and said, perhaps we over-indexed on centralization. Where do we have customer overlap in our business units where having some commonality and ability to know who this customer is in different regions of the world? We got very specific about that. So we've actually tried to be a little intentional to say, where is something really important at the Cargill level? Where is something really in one of those now 3 major business units? Or is it something that we can even delegate down to the region because it's much more operational and we don't yet see a need to aggregate? Now, that being said, we still like to aggregate data. We do believe in having good data platforms that help inform insights and decision making. So in many cases, we are bringing that together and we are creating the right harmonized view of data so that we can take decisions. Because one of the things we're incredibly proud of, we have an incredibly powerful trading organization, and traders, oh man, they absolutely rely upon high quality current data to inform how they make decisions. So we're in the business of trying to figure out both all the time. I will never claim we've got it all figured out, but I have to say I'm really impressed with how we go about talking about the trade-offs and then making the decisions that we think are fit for purpose for Cargill.
Yeah, and I'm impressed with the way in which you describe that. A great overview of it, and easier said than done. It sounds like remarkable progress across your tenure, even if, as you say, there's more progress to be made. I alluded to in the introduction, your 2030 strategy. The company aims to nourish the world safely, responsibly, and sustainably. And I'd love to have you take a moment and highlight how your organization helps the broader company achieve those goals.
Yeah, and our purpose is such a North Star for our organization. So that purpose has been around for a very long time. And one of the things I chuckle about is when people say, like, it's hard to know who Cargill is, but once you know, it's hard not to know. But they're like, why Cargill? I'm like, it's hard not to be motivated by that purpose. But I mean, if you think about it, there is nothing more critical in this world than nourishment. And it is just so at the heart of who we are and how we operate. So what I would say is we show up everywhere in how we serve that purpose. And when we think about the both digital and data solutions that we're responsible for to bring them forward, we care deeply about what that means throughout the entire supply chain. We have to care deeply to make sure that what we're doing is good for farmers, because if farmers aren't winning, then we aren't winning. And I mean that all the way through, all the way to those of us that consume the food. If the farmers can't support their families on how they operate, then we need to rethink the system. We need to make sure that candidly we get to win, not unnecessarily like out of proportion, but we're part of this too. So we need to make sure that our employees and our shareholders find themselves in their digital solutions, and we make it easier. And of course, we have to serve our customers as we do that too. So when we think about how we serve, we think about digital in terms of what do we do for augmentation of our products, largely augmentation of our products through digital and or data capabilities. That could be things like traceability of cocoa beans, because many of us are highly motivated to make sure that we're buying sustainable products. Well, if we can give confidence to consumers and our customers, then ultimately to consumers on where those cocoa beans came from, and did they come from places where labor laws are enforced and they're farming sustainably, well, then we're going to do that. So we use data and digital to help augment the value of those cocoa beans to our customers. If we think about our customer experience, so how you interact with us, large or small, are we given the right digital experience where it makes sense? We think that by running our operations efficiently and reducing waste in our processes, that is serving our purpose. So we think it's sprinkled throughout, but I will have to say, like, when we think about how we make decisions, how it serves that purpose is the very first filter that we go through.
Yeah, very interesting. I've also been fascinated by your intent to insource a lot of what was outsourced. I believe that when you arrived at the organization, your IT and digital organization was roughly 80% outsourced, and you have a stated target to get to 60% insourced. I'd love to understand how you've begun to drive this forward. Talk a bit about that, if you would.
Oh yeah, Peter, it's a really important part of our digital strategy. So when we think about Cargill 2030, we've got 5 major work streams in my organization and how we're supporting Cargill 2030, which includes a whole bunch of things to get ourselves in a position to support the kind of growth that we think the world needs from us. And one of them is people and culture. And that is referencing really how do we create the environment that is both a destination for tech talent, but also really reflects how we want our talent to be focused on that purpose. So when we're 80% outsourced, I have a great deal of respect for the partners that are in that ecosystem that help us serve every single day. Like, I have deep respect for what they do for Cargill. And also, they have to serve their organization at the same time as serving Cargill. And when you create that bifurcation, no, even when done perfectly, it is still a bifurcation of focus. And so we've chosen to flip that mix. We know that we have a responsibility to do that with cost effectiveness, and we know we can do it. So our commitment is through the work that we're doing, we will be able to do more. We will be able to do it better. We will be able to do it faster, and we'll do it as a consequence less expensively than we have been in the past. And we're delivering on that. So as we insource, we are targeting everything from cybersecurity talent to data scientists to software engineers to application configuration specialists. So it really is, how do we make sure we have the technical talent to be able to create and sustain our products in a way that they feel as committed to that purpose and Cargill's success and the success of our farmers and customers as much as we are. So that is our journey. I'm incredibly proud. We have so many things to be excited about in the future, and we're really proud of what we've done. So earlier this year, we've just flipped over our fiscal year. So I'll just say in November of 24, just to make it really clear, we opened a technology hub location in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're still committed to our talent here in Minnesota, but we wanted to have a second location in the US to concentrate our tech talent. It allowed us to fish, if you will, in some different ponds and get exposure to different tech talent. We're doubling down in our Bangalore location, so we're going to more than double the size of that location. So this year, we were very focused on getting many of those building blocks in. Do we have the location picked? Are we up and running? Do we know the job architecture that they're going to hire into? Because tech talent's going to want to understand how their career is going to progress. Have we done the right market studies to understand the jobs and candidly the compensation levels and everything else that we needed to be successful? So in last fiscal year, we targeted to hire at least 300. We actually exceeded that. So we're very excited about that progress. In the current fiscal year, which started on June 1st, we intend to hire over 500. And our expectation is about 40% of that will be in our US locations, about 40% of that will be in India. And then, of course, because we're global, Peter, 20% will be sprinkled everywhere else into different office and operation locations around the world.
To get an indication, Jen, of the broader impact of that, how big is the team more broadly speaking, if you would?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we started this, when we had the 80% outsourced, we were somewhere between 11 and 12,000 human beings, Peter, that were serving the kind of the facility that is digital and data at Cargill. We anticipate that when we're done, we'll be in the 5 to 6,000 total range, and about 60% plus will be internal. So we're already down some, and the ratio is coming down. So we went from about 80 to we're somewhere in the 60s now, like still outsourced. So we still got to flip it. But we've been plugging away to make sure that we're doing that the right way. Because when we make the investment in Cargill badge talent, I want them to feel super committed. And I want to make sure that we're creating an environment where they thrive and where they feel excited about the future. So we've been really thoughtful to make sure that we don't just go out and flip badges for people. Not that they shouldn't compete, they should, but we want to be really intentional about our locations and the roles and the teams. And so I want them to work in product organizations where they understand and have accountability, soup to nuts, for outcomes with our colleagues across Cargill. So we've been super intentional, but we're chucking away. So we anticipate probably another 2+ years, and we'll be where we want to be.
And as you think about the division of folks in the U.S., India, the 20% that are sprinkled everywhere else, as you noted, do you have a clear thought process on the type of work that is done in each of these areas, or are there distinctions that could be drawn across geographic lines?
And I wish it were super elegant and clear, Peter, but I'll do my best. Because here's what it is. We're a global organization, which means sometimes the geography itself helps determine, like, is there a time zone proximity that makes the choice more obvious? But one of the things that we're unwavering in is we want contained teams. We want teams that can, because we have a hybrid environment, we expect people to be in the office the majority of the time. So then when you're sliding your chair back to talk to your colleague, there are people that are working on your team. So we want teams that have true accountability, which means that sometimes when we're starting, we have to make a choice on which region it's in, even if it's a global application, at least until we can decide if it warrants having two product teams, if you will, to justify that. But yeah, so we start with, is it a global product? Is it a regional product? If it's regional, it becomes very obvious. How do we make sure that we're aligning that most appropriately? Then we start looking for, of course, availability of talent. Where do we want to make sure that we're investing in where we have a pipeline that we can be successful in filling out our teams? The good news is where we've picked in the locations, that largely hasn't been a challenge for us. We certainly have to compete for talent, but it's there, and we can actually get it. We can tap into that. So it largely comes down to what part of Cargill is it serving, and then how do we make sure we have those self-contained teams so that they can work as a collaborative unit to be able to solve complex problems.
Very interesting. Thank you for that overview. We talked earlier about data and your philosophy as it pertains to its collection and use and synthesis and the insights drawn from it. Naturally, advances in artificial intelligence are aiding that process tremendously. I'd love to have you share a bit about your own perspectives on its use in areas, for example, across the agricultural supply chain that itself, as you note, is expansive and complex. Talk a bit about its use, if you would.
Oh, absolutely. And Peter, I think one of the fun parts of our jobs is that we get to manage both the overexcitement as well as the underexcitement of any technology, right? And so I felt like in the early days, half my job was spent just saying, no, it's not ready for that yet. Calm down a little bit. Like there was a little bit, not shocking. We have all seen the hype curve before. It's the reason you can map it is because it is real. Okay, so yes. But what I will tell you is that where we are is absolutely amazing. So I think to your point, the ability, the speed in which these innovations are coming is unlike anything I've seen in my career, and it is really, really cool. So we think of where generative AI is going to generate value. We've kind of created 4 use case categories, for lack of a better framing. We think that there is absolutely in the R&D space, so in the innovation space, how do we help our research and development teams that are innovating on how to do precision fermentation in order to create alternatives to stevia leaf. I mean, it's pretty cool stuff. Like, how do we give them tools that reduce the universe of experimentation faster so that they can get down to what are the real things, real product innovations that we think can create value for customers. So we've got a whole category in partnership with our R&D and engineering team to be able to do that. We've got a different category that is all about enhancing customer experience. And that can be, and I've got some really great examples that I just love because they're generating value in the hands of our teams and our customers today. There's a third category that is, of course, productivity, of course. And we're seeing it in our own team. Heavens, we're doing a major upgrade on a legacy ERP, and we're using it to both reverse engineer what the code was doing, as well as make the first pass on what the upgraded code should look like. So they massive 10% plus productivity. When else in our careers have we unlocked something with 10% productivity? It is just unbelievable. So will it be sustainable? We'll see, but I'll take I'll take less than 10%, but I'd like it. But we're really encouraged by what we're seeing in our early cases. And then the fourth category is all about decision support. So how do we actually ingest? How do we help Cargill know what Cargill already knows? If only we could just figure out where it is, right? So how do we make sure that we're using it for decision support and creating better insights? And so we proudly tell people we're not a bleeding edge adopter. We consider ourselves a mainstream adopter. Everything from my informal market research would say that Cargill's on the leading edge of mainstream adopters. So we're not a laggard by any means. And part of that's because we were really thoughtful around working collaboratively with those groups across Cargill and finding use cases that would solve real problems. And they are. We're excited. They're not proofs of concepts. They are in production. They are running, and they are absolutely generating positive outcomes for Cargill.
That's really exciting. And I love how tangible this is. And I appreciate you sharing some of the specifics of the value contribution you're already deriving from it. I'd love to, especially again, given the scale that you have on your team, but more broadly speaking, across the entire organization, how do you think about adoption? Just to take an absurd example to paint a picture, if you personally were the best user of these tools anywhere in the world, if it were only you, obviously it's doing nothing for the company. And so this really requires team activity. This is ensuring everyone is sort of immersed in this, investigating this, thinking about the application of continued advancement in helping accelerate a strategy pursued, et cetera. How do you think about at scale ensuring that this is something that is immersive and used on a daily basis?
Oh, it's a very fair comment, Peter. And I would say that would be a challenge in any technology product we put out there. So yes, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we're unlocking the value that we intended. So if I think about it, and I'll use AI examples because that is certainly what's interesting. AI is not new to any of us. Like we've been working with AI for years, and we've been using AI to analyze, I'll be a little graphic, Peter, the waste of chickens, in order to fine-tune their nutrition so that we are making sure we're raising healthy chickens without the use of antibiotics. So we can do really cool stuff with AI. When you add generative AI on that, I'll use an example where we're seeing tons of value. We have a really complex food ingredients portfolio. And we have sales and commercial people around the world trying to sell this incredibly complex ingredients portfolio that I don't believe any human could understand by themselves, not a single one. To your point, one person's not going to get it done. But if we can create we have a generative AI tool that allows them, we ingested and trained on all of our product specs so that when you go to meet with a bakery customer, or if it's not a current or future one, we can highlight what problems are you trying to solve? Oh, I'm struggling with moisture content in some of the food, and as a consequence, it's not as shelf stable as I would like to be. So I need to increase shelf stability of these bakery items, but I don't want to lose the moistness, because who would? Really? I mean, you want your cakes to be super, sweet and soft and all those things. Well, we can actually just ask, tell me, what are the ingredients in the Cargill portfolio that could address this problem? And it comes up with incredibly thoughtful information. And then it says, and here are the links to the places if you want to know more. So here are the ingredients, here's their product spec, so that you can actually go in and do that. So when we think about what adoption looks like, we're checking. We're checking to make sure that the sales teams are tapping in, because if they're not, we want to understand why. Is it because the bakery segment just isn't growing as fast as we had hoped? Is it that there's something wrong with the model? It's spitting out data that isn't helpful to them, or they're just an experienced salesperson and they figure they know the portfolio well enough, they don't need help. So we put the data and the analytics in the hands of the product teams, including the product managers, to say, if you said your goal was to help our salespeople be more effective, to help candidly increase sales in the bakery sector, we're checking that. And then if we're laying that across the adoption metrics of the tool itself, and if we're not seeing what we would expect, we've got two choices: to figure out what's broken or to shut it down. And we have examples of both.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you again for sharing that. I wanted to, as I mentioned in the introduction, talk to you a bit about your board membership. About 2.5 years ago, as I alluded to, you joined the Ingersoll Rand board. And this is a goal of a lot of your peers. And thankfully, it's a club that is gaining membership. People who are chief information and or digital and or technology officers who've been asked to join publicly traded companies, and in this case, a Fortune 500 company's board. And I'd love to understand your pathway to gain board membership at that specific company, as well as maybe some reflections on what you've gained from the experience taken back to your operating role, but also what a board gains from having somebody like you on it.
It's a really great question. And I like just shout out to my Ingersoll Rand friends. It is an amazing management team. It is a great set of colleagues on the board that we work together. I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to add that to my experience set. And it's been a really fun experience. So if I rewind a bit, I, like many of my colleagues in chairs like mine, thought, well, I really do think that there is something that I can both offer as part of a public company board experience, or maybe a private company or whatever that might be. But there's also something I think I can learn by being a part of that. So how do you separate governance from management? How do you think about things differently? How do you perform your role more effectively on both sides of that, if you understand and have empathy for what the other experience is? Because let's be really clear, empathy is what helps us be effective leaders. And what started was, long before I came to Cargill, I started to talk to people who were on boards, including the board members of my prior companies, that said, hey, you should think about this someday. Like many things, I'd love to say that I was brilliant and was like, oh yeah, I had aspirations for that from day one. Absolutely not. I had really amazing mentors and coaches throughout my career that made me aware of opportunities that I would not have dreamed big enough to even imagine. So in this particular case, a couple of board members were like, I think you should think about this. And so I did. I was like, okay, that would be really interesting. But I did have to think differently. Like, what would I offer? So I did. I went through any one of our partner organizations, likely have some kind of a board readiness program. So if you're in a chair like mine, talk to your favorite partner. They may or may not have that. In my case, Deloitte did, and they helped me think about how to position myself not as a management team member, but as a potential board member. And that is a different frame for your experience set. And then I went through a number of there's a lot of waiting. I made sure that everyone in my circle knew that this is something I would eventually like to do, because it's not just executive search, if you will. It's also who you know, and making sure that people in your circle know your aspirations so they can keep their eyes and ears open for what opportunities might come. And then I had a couple that came forward that after I looked at them, they weren't right. Because many people work in organizations that won't allow them to serve on a board while they're still in their full-time role. I have been very fortunate in the last couple of companies I've worked for that was something that they were open to. There's always governance, conflicts of interest reviews, making sure the CEO and the board is comfortable with the company. And what happened is when I was still at Baker Hughes, a couple came forward and I didn't think they were right. And so I just said, because if I only get to do this once, I want to make sure that I'm picking very carefully. And like all things, if I'm going to commit, I'm going to commit myself fully. So which means that I'm not going to do it if I think a year from now I'm going to tap out. I want to make sure that I have really interested in creating a positive impact to the organization as well as to myself. So fast forward, after I joined Cargill, it's interesting, Peter. I'm pretty sure the last time we spoke, I was actually starting the process to be placed, but I wasn't in a position to talk about it yet. And I went through all the interviews and the discussions and ultimately was selected. And it's such an exciting opportunity. Their product portfolio is one that I get really jazzed up about. I grew up in industrial manufacturing between Baker Hughes and Caterpillar and Cameron. And there's something about highly engineered product that goes out and makes industrial things happen that just bring me joy. So I really enjoyed being back into a product portfolio that allowed me to kind of ground out to who I am at my roots. I'm now learning I can also be agriculture, supply chain, and food. But there is something about my past experience that I think is helpful because I did grow up and how to think, how to lead in an end-to-end industrial manufacturing organization. So I had empathy for that. I had knowledge and experience in and around how to create connected product to be able to create more consistent revenue flows. So how do you sensor enable a product to be able to look at performance management for preventive maintenance and all the things that go with creating solutions rather than just products. So I came in with that. Of course, I came in with how to run enterprise IT and cybersecurity and all of those things as well. But I do think there is maybe it's a philosophical approach. I consider my responsibility to be a business leader for Cargill that comes with domain expertise, digital, data, cyber, all the things that are in my portfolio. But by approaching it as a business leader and understanding how we make money, how do we manage risk, how do we manage all the other components of our business, I think it prepared me differently. That being said, still learning a ton. So, of course, I am on the audit committee because that is like the committee I get to spend the most time with as a management team member too. But I also asked, I said, hey, to both the lead director and our chairman and CEO, I said, I know that it's a lot, but I'd love to be on the compensation committee as well, because that is the part of the board operations I know the least about. So my promise is I will be an incredibly dedicated student so that you're not but in the spirit of, I think I am bringing something to the board. I also wanted to make sure I was learning something that they would help continue to augment my experience as well. So it wasn't just the comp committee. I just have learned a great deal about how a board interacts, about how management teams show up. I feel like I am better able to prepare my team to present to the board when they do, because I better understand how it feels to be part of a diverse group of individuals that come together episodically that don't know your business as well as you do and try to provide thoughtful governance and support for what they're trying to accomplish. That was a relatively long answer, Peter, but it's a part of my career I have an incredible amount of passion for, which is just so fun.
Clearly the case, and I really appreciate those reflections. I think very helpful for others who might wish to walk in your footsteps. So thank you for all of them. We've already spoken about a number of trends on the rise, artificial intelligence and Gen AI being perhaps the most prominent of those. As you look to the future, what else is kind of making its way onto your roadmap and having you curious about potential impact to a business such as yours, or personal impact as the case may be?
Yeah, it'll be really kind of fun because I think that, we're all very much into the LLM world right now. And we have started to experiment with more agents. So agentic AI, if you will. Like now, I realize that's a bit of an offshoot. So I hope I get a pass on finding out something that's really cool out there. But I think that is really cool. So what I think is very, very interesting, and I would put the generative AI and agentic AI in this category. I think we have this incredible responsibility to be ethical in how we approach it. So when we started our generative AI journey, we made some commitments on what is our policy, what is our ethical position, how do we do this responsibly? Because remember, our purpose guides us. So if we can't do it safe and responsible and sustainable, we don't want to do it. So this was still at the heart of what we do. And we made an incredibly thoughtful choice that we would keep a human in the loop. So right now there's a very healthy debate happening between autonomous agents and non-autonomous agents. Because non-autonomous agents would imply a human is still in the loop. I am actually clicking the button to commit the transaction that is being done. Autonomous, we're having some thoughtful debate on, like how confident do we have to be in the agent's performance before we take an active participant out of the loop. Now, the human was still in the loop in the creation. I get that, but it's a really interesting thing that I think we all get to wrestle with, which is what's the cost of an error? How bad would it be? Because would it be responsible for us to do autonomous agents if the error would create something negative that we can't live with? Like, so having those debates, which I think is a really fun place to be, is like, we've been spending our careers matching technology to complex problems. And I think never has that been more relevant than right now. And also, we have to do that responsibly, ethically. Are we doing it in a way that serves our customers, serves our employees, serves our shareholders in the best possible way. Because I'm not going to lie, I came from energy. So what this is doing in the energy sector is pretty impressive, but there are also consequences to that. And are we sure that we're bringing the right tool to the challenge that we're facing, and that we're not candidly creating a high cost, high carbon intensive solution when something else will do? So that is another thing that I think we have the responsibility to make sure we're managing. Yes, use the best as long as it's the best tool for this situation more holistically. The things on the horizon that I'm curious about, I think that maybe it's a little bit further out. I do think quantum is going to come. I don't know if it'll be as mainstream before I retire, and I've still got some years in front of me, but I think that's going to create some really cool things. And even now we're starting to think about cybersecurity preparation in anticipation of that. So I don't want that to consume a huge amount of my team's time, but it can't consume zero. So those are the things that I think that are really out there that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, great thoughts in each case, and certainly give us reason to think about what might be on the horizon and ways in which we prepare for those. It's really great to hear some of the thoughts about how you're doing so. I wanted to conclude, if you don't mind, Jen, by asking you if you've recently read, watched, and/or listened to anything that you would recommend to peers. Anything come to mind?
Oh, I'm a constant input driver, Peter. So I'm either reading, listening, watching something all the time. But there are a few things that I think are tried and true that I would always recommend. So first, I think I think everyone who listens and/or watches should do this all the time. I actually was talking to a group of next in line CIOs not that long ago, and they asked me the same thing. And I'm like, well, here's what I would say. You should consume information, quality information, from as many sources as you can, which means you should listen to tech podcasts. You should listen to tech podcasts like yours that hear from different leaders across different sectors. Why do I say that? Because maybe you learn one thing from this that causes you to think differently. It is the collection of those one things that I think help create well-rounded leaders. So when I think about the big books or the big things I've done throughout my career, there is something around whatever book you choose. My personal favorite is Crucial Conversations, is how do you prepare yourself for constructive dialogue and debate? Because if you're doing your job well, you're bringing together amazingly diverse teams that have thoughtfully different opinions on what the best path forward is. We shouldn't be working on things that everybody agrees. We're working on things where the options are not clear, right? So you actually have to work through it. So are you building your skills to have influence in this, and kind of like the competency to be able to navigate tough conversations? Are you learning about your business? So please, in whatever industry you're in, go find books that help talk about the history of your entire market, because you need to understand how you're making money. Are you spending time listening to? And I'm an avid podcaster. I like to run. I'm very slow. I'm super persistent, which means I get tons of pavement time. So I'm a listener of podcasts rather than watcher, but it is something that I do relentlessly, because I think that even if I pull nothing from today's episode, great, but I might. And so that's my commitment to myself, is to be looking at such a diverse set of points of view that I'm pulling nuggets of goodness from each of them so that I can make sure I'm creating a more holistic approach to how I lead.
Yeah, what a thoughtful set of perspectives here, as has been the case across this conversation, Jen. I've long been struck by not only the depth of your insights and your remarkable abilities as a storyteller, but I really also admire how deeply you think about your job and how you can constantly hone your craft. Certainly represented so well through this conversation. What a pleasure it is to have access to your insights and access to you. I'm so grateful for the time you spent with me today.
Oh, Peter, my appreciation is right back at you, because you are on my list of the podcasts that I listen to when I'm out pounding the pavement. And I gain great insights from the diversity of leaders that you let us have exposure to. So I appreciate your commitment to your craft.
You're very, very kind to say so. Thanks, Jen.